The air inside the lawyer's office felt heavy, thick with fake grief and quiet excitement. My entire family had gathered for one reason: Grandpa's will. Black clothes, somber faces, and rehearsed sighs filled the room, but I could see through all of it. Behind every tear was anticipation. Millions were at stake. I sat in the far corner, unnoticed as always. That had been my role in the family for years, the quiet one, the forgotten one. No one expected anything from me, and honestly, I had stopped expecting anything from them too. The lawyer cleared his throat, instantly silencing the room. We will now begin the reading of the will. One by one, names were called. My uncle received 2 luxury properties. My aunt got a massive investment portfolio. My cousins were handed trust funds so large they could probably live without working another day in their lives. Each announcement was followed by gasps, whispers, and barely contained smiles. My parents sat tall, their hands tightly clasped together. When their names were called, they were awarded a large share of Grandpa's business. Their relief was obvious. My mother even let out a quiet, emotional laugh. And me? I sat still, waiting. Not hopeful, just curious. Finally, the lawyer looked down at the final page. My name. For the first time, everyone in the room turned to look at me. I could feel their eyes, some amused, some indifferent. The lawyer adjusted his glasses, pausing just long enough to build tension. Then he spoke. To you, he leaves a phone number. Silence. For a second, no one reacted. Then the room exploded into laughter. A phone number? One of my cousins repeated, barely able to breathe through his laughter. Was that a mistake? Someone else added. Even my parents looked confused, then disappointed. I didn't laugh, because something about it didn't feel like a joke. The lawyer handed me a small envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper, a number, and beneath it, just 2 words: trust wisely. At that moment, I realized this was only the beginning. The laughter didn't stop. It echoed through the room, bouncing off the polished walls like a cruel joke I couldn't escape. My cousins leaned back in their chairs, wiping tears from their eyes as if this was the funniest moment of their lives. A phone number, one of them repeated, shaking his head. That's actually pathetic. I kept my face still, refusing to give them the reaction they wanted. But inside, something burned. Not sadness, something sharper. Something colder. My mother leaned toward me, her voice low but heavy with disappointment. Maybe your grandfather forgot to update your part, she whispered. We'll talk to the lawyer later. I nodded slightly, though I knew she didn't really care. To her, this was just another confirmation of what she already believed, that I was the least important one. The lawyer cleared his throat again, trying to restore order, but the damage was done. The room had already decided my worth. I looked down at the envelope in my hand. It was simple, plain, sealed carefully, as if it actually mattered. That didn't match the joke everyone thought it was. Slowly, I opened it. Inside was a small card. Clean. Neatly written. A phone number. Nothing else, except 2 words written beneath it. Trust wisely. My fingers tightened around the card. That message didn't feel random. Grandpa wasn't careless. He was precise, always had been. Every decision he made had a reason behind it. He wasn't the type to leave something meaningless behind. Which meant this. This wasn't a mistake. Across the room, my father was already discussing investments with my uncle, completely ignoring me. My cousins were still whispering and laughing, probably turning me into the punchline of their next story. Good. Let them laugh. I slipped the card back into the envelope and stood up quietly. No one stopped me. No one even noticed when I walked out of the room. But as I stepped into the hallway, away from the noise, I felt something shift inside me. They thought I had received nothing. They were wrong. And for the first time, I had something they didn't. That night, silence filled my apartment. No laughter. No whispers. No judgment. Just me and the envelope. I placed it on the table and stared at it like it might reveal its secrets on its own. The events of the day kept replaying in my mind. The smirks, the laughter, the way my family had already dismissed me as nothing. A phone number. I exhaled slowly, running a hand through my hair. Grandpa wasn't careless. He wouldn't leave me with something meaningless. Not after everything he had taught me growing up about patience, observation, and trust. Especially trust. My eyes drifted back to the 2 words written under the number. Trust wisely. It felt less like advice and more like a warning. I picked up my phone. For a moment, my thumb hovered over the screen. Doubt crept in. What if it really was nothing? What if this was some kind of mistake? Then I remembered their laughter. That was enough. I dialed the number. The phone rang once. Twice. Then it clicked. Hello, I said cautiously. There was a brief pause. Not the kind of pause from confusion, but the kind that felt intentional. Then a calm, steady voice spoke on the other end. We've been expecting your call. My grip tightened around the phone. Who is this? I asked, my voice sharper now. Another pause. Controlled. Measured. Before we proceed, the voice said, Please confirm your identity. A chill ran down my spine. This wasn't random. I gave my name. There was the faint sound of typing in the background, followed by a soft exhale. Thank you, the voice replied. Your grandfather made very specific arrangements. My heart started to race. What arrangements? I asked. The answer came without hesitation. Everything your family believes they inherited is only part of the truth. I froze. The room suddenly felt smaller. What do you mean? I whispered. The voice remained calm, almost unreadable. If you're ready to understand what he truly left you, they said, you'll need to meet us in person. A pause. Then, quietly, tomorrow. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that voice again. Calm, controlled, certain. We've been expecting your call. It didn't sound like a scam or a mistake. It sounded prepared. By morning, I had made my decision. I was going. The address they gave me led to a part of the city I had never visited before. Quiet streets, tall glass buildings, and an atmosphere that felt far removed from anything my family had ever been part of. This wasn't normal wealth. This was something else. I stepped inside the building and was immediately greeted by a receptionist who seemed to already know who I was. Please go right in, she said with a polite smile. No questions. No hesitation. That alone made my pulse quicken. I followed the hallway to a private office. The door was slightly open, as if they had been waiting for me. Inside, a man in a perfectly tailored suit stood by the window, his back turned. You're right on time, he said, without even looking. The door clicked shut behind me. Who are you? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He turned slowly, his expression calm and unreadable. My name isn't important, he replied. What matters is why you're here. He gestured for me to sit. I didn't move. Start talking, I said. A faint smile appeared on his face, like he had expected that response. Your grandfather, he began, was not just a wealthy man. I frowned. I already know he was rich. The man shook his head slightly. No, he said. You know what he allowed people to see. He walked toward the desk and placed a thick folder in front of me. This, he continued, is what he kept hidden. My eyes dropped to the folder. Slowly, I opened it. Inside were documents, contracts, company names, financial statements, things far beyond anything mentioned in the will. My breath caught. This isn't possible, I whispered. The man leaned forward slightly, his voice quiet but firm. Your family received the inheritance. He paused. You received the truth. My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages. Each document felt heavier than the last, not physically, but in what it meant. Company names I had never heard of, international accounts, investment portfolios spread across countries I had only ever seen on maps. This has to be a mistake, I said, my voice barely steady. The man across from me didn't react. It isn't, he replied calmly. I looked up at him, searching for any sign of deception. There was none, just quiet certainty. These companies, I said, tapping the papers, their worth this is more than what my entire family received combined. Yes, he said simply. The word echoed in my head. More, not equal. Not close.
More.
I swallowed hard. Why would he hide this? The man folded his hands on the desk, studying me carefully. Because your grandfather understood something most people don't, he said. Wealth reveals character, but hidden wealth exposes truth. I frowned, trying to process that. He knew exactly what your family would do with money, the man continued. Spend it.
Show it.
Lose it. My mind flashed back to the laughter in the lawyer's office. The excitement. The greed. And me? I asked quietly. For the first time, the man's expression shifted slightly. You, he said, were the only one he believed would ask questions. Silence filled the room. That hit harder than anything else. He didn't just leave you assets, the man added. He left you control. He reached into the folder and pulled out a final document, sliding it toward me. My name was on it.
Clear.
Official. Undeniable. This document, he said, transfers full authority of these holdings to you. My heart pounded. How much is all of this worth? I asked. The man didn't hesitate. Enough to build empires or destroy them. I leaned back slowly, trying to breathe. Yesterday, I was the joke. The one who got nothing. Today, I was holding something my family couldn't even imagine. And suddenly, Grandpa's final words made perfect sense. Trust wisely. Because now I understood. This wasn't just an inheritance. It was power. I sat there in silence, the weight of everything pressing down on me. All my life, I thought I understood my grandfather. He was quiet, observant, sometimes distant, the kind of man who spoke less but noticed everything. While the rest of the family chased his approval with loud gestures and fake affection, I was the only one who ever sat with him in silence. Now, I realized he had been watching all of us.
Carefully. Patiently.
You're starting to understand, the man across from me said, breaking the silence. I nodded slowly. He planned this. Yes, he replied. Years in advance. I looked back at the documents, my mind racing. So, everything my family received was intentional, he finished. Just like what you received. I let out a quiet breath, leaning back in my chair. He gave them enough to feel powerful, I said. But not enough to actually be powerful, the man added. A strange clarity settled over me. For years, I had watched my family measure worth in money, status, and control. They believed whoever had the most mattered the most. Grandpa knew that. And he used it. He didn't trust them, I said. The man tilted his head slightly. Not exactly. I looked up. He understood them, he corrected. There's a difference. That hit deeper. Understanding meant he saw them clearly. Every weakness, every flaw, every predictable choice they would make once money was placed in their hands. And me? I asked quietly. The man's gaze sharpened. He trusted your restraint. The word lingered in the air. Restraint. Not intelligence. Not ambition. Control. I thought back to all the moments I stayed quiet when others fought. All the times I walked away instead of reacting. All the years I was overlooked because I didn't compete for attention. Those weren't weaknesses. They were the reason I was here. He didn't just give you wealth, the man continued. He gave you responsibility. I looked down at my name on the document again. It felt different now. Heavier. More deliberate. Grandpa hadn't made a random decision. He made a choice. And in that moment, I understood something that changed everything. This wasn't about revenge. Not yet. This was a test. And whether I passed or failed would decide everything that came next. The first few weeks passed quietly. I didn't tell anyone. Not my parents. Not my cousins. No one. To them, I was still the same person, the one who got nothing but a phone number. And I let them believe it. I watched from a distance as their lives began to change, exactly the way Grandpa must have predicted. At first, it looked like success. New cars appeared in driveways. Expensive vacations flooded social media. My cousins suddenly became business experts, throwing money into risky investments they barely understood. My parents expanded the family business too quickly, chasing growth instead of stability. They weren't building anything. They were showing off. Meanwhile, I spent my days in that quiet office, learning everything I could. The man, still refusing to give his name, guided me through every detail: investments, risk management, asset protection. It was overwhelming at first, but I adapted quickly. Because I had to. This wasn't just money. It was a system, an empire, and I was now responsible for it. Watch patterns, the man told me one afternoon. People always reveal themselves through repetition. So I watched, and the patterns became clear. Within months, the cracks started to show. One of my cousins lost a massive amount in a failed startup. Another got caught in a legal issue over a shady deal. My parents' business began to struggle under the weight of poor decisions and rushed expansions. The confidence they once had started to disappear. Then came the phone calls. At first, subtle. "Hey, just checking in. We should meet sometime." It didn't take long for the tone to change. "We might need some help." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was inevitable. They still didn't know the truth. They thought I was weak, irrelevant, powerless. But now, I was the one watching everything fall apart. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one being overlooked. I was the one in control. The calls became more frequent. What started as casual check-ins quickly turned into something else, something heavier. Desperation has a way of changing people, stripping away pride piece by piece. One evening, my phone rang again. This time, I answered. "Hello." There was a pause on the other end before I heard my father's voice. It sounded different.
Softer.
Uncertain.
"We need to talk," he said.
Not "I want." Not "can we meet." "We need." I agreed. The next day, I walked into the same house where I had once felt invisible. Nothing had changed on the surface. Same furniture, same walls, but the energy was completely different. Tension filled the room. My parents sat together, their expressions tight. My cousins were there too, quieter than I had ever seen them. No laughter. No arrogance. Just worry. "You're here," my mother said, forcing a small smile. I nodded and took a seat across from them. No one spoke for a moment. Finally, my father cleared his throat. "Things haven't been going well." I didn't respond. He continued, "Some of our investments didn't work out. The business is struggling. We just need a little support to stabilize things." A little support. I almost admired the way he tried to make it sound small. One of my cousins leaned forward. "You've always been careful with money," he added quickly. "We figured maybe you save something, or know someone who can help." I looked at him, remembering the same person laughing at me just weeks ago. Interesting how quickly respect appears when money disappears. "And why would I help?" I asked calmly. The question hit harder than any accusation. My mother's expression faltered. "Because we're family."
Family.
The same word they used when it benefited them. I leaned back slightly, studying each of their faces. For years, I had sat in silence while they ignored me. Now, they were all waiting for my answer. And for the first time, I had all the power in the room. But power isn't about shouting. It's about choosing what comes next. And I was just getting started. The room was completely silent. Every pair of eyes was fixed on me, waiting, hoping. For help.
For mercy.
For something. I let the silence stretch, just a little longer. Long enough for them to feel it. Long enough for them to remember every moment they had ever ignored me. Then, slowly, I leaned forward. "You want my help," I said calmly. My father nodded quickly.
Yes.
Just enough to get us back on track. Back on track. As if nothing had happened. As if I hadn't been sitting in that same house for years, invisible to all of them. I studied their faces. My mother's forced composure. My cousin's anxious expressions. My father's quiet desperation. They really had no idea. "All right," I said. Relief instantly spread across the room. Shoulders relaxed. My mother even let out a soft breath, like everything was about to be fixed. That's when I reached into my bag and placed a folder on the table. The same kind of folder I had received that day. My father frowned slightly. "What's this?" "Open it," I said. He hesitated for a second, then did. As his eyes scanned the first page, the color slowly drained from his face. "What is this?" he whispered. My cousin leaned over his shoulder, then froze. This can't be real.
But it was.
Page after page, companies, assets, holdings. Numbers far beyond anything they had received from the will. This, I said quietly, is what Grandpa actually left behind. My mother shook her head in disbelief. No, that's not possible. We got everything. I held her gaze. No, I replied. You got what he wanted you to have. The words hit like a shockwave. Silence followed.
Heavy.
Crushing. You're saying, my father struggled to speak. All of this belongs to you? I didn't smile. I didn't need to. Yes. No anger. No shouting. Just truth. And in that moment, something shifted in the room. For the first time in their lives, they weren't looking down at me. They were looking up. The room stayed silent long after I spoke. No one moved. No one dared breathe too loudly. My family, once so loud, so sure, so arrogant, was now quiet, broken in ways only power can reveal. I looked at them calmly. Not with anger, not with glee. Just clarity. I didn't come here to destroy you, I said. I came here to show you the truth. They exchanged confused glances. My father opened his mouth to argue, but no words came. My cousins fidgeted nervously. My mother's hands shook slightly as she clutched her purse. Grandpa didn't want revenge, I continued. He wanted clarity, and he knew you wouldn't understand it until it was too late. They all stayed silent, finally beginning to grasp the reality they had ignored for so long. They had laughed at me when I received nothing but a phone number. They had underestimated me, dismissed me, and mocked me. Now they realized the mistake they had made. I closed the folder gently and stood. My family still sat frozen, staring at the evidence of their folly. You can rebuild, I said softly, or you can continue blaming everyone else for your failures. That choice is yours. For the first time, I felt a sense of freedom, not from money, not from revenge, but from the burden of being overlooked. I had inherited more than wealth. I had inherited responsibility, wisdom, and the kind of patience that could move empires. I left the room without another word. No need to gloat, no need to explain. Outside, the city felt brighter somehow, the air fresher. I realized that Grandpa's final gift wasn't just the fortune. It was perspective, the understanding that real power comes not from showing off, but from knowing what to do when everyone else fails. And that single phone number, it had changed everything. From being the invisible one, I had become the one in control. The lesson Grandpa had taught me was clear. Wealth is temporary, ego is fragile, but wisdom lasts forever. And as I walked away, I knew one thing for certain. The legacy wasn't about revenge. It was about seeing the truth and using it wisely. The inheritance had started with a number and ended with everything. If you want, I can also generate a female main character picture for this story and give her a USA-style name for your character, so it's ready for YouTube or social media storytelling. Do you want me to do that next?